Hello and welcome to the geeky way of making engineering teams to follow standards collaboratively, a presentation that we have prepared for the Hungarian Software Testing Forum.
Hi there, I'm Andrei and I'm saying hi from Barcelona. About myself as a professional, I've always enjoyed the creative and data-driven way of looking at technology, and through my blogs and talks, I hope to inspire many of you IT professionals out there to bring value to your organization in new, diverse, and ingenious ways. In my free time, I enjoy cooking and gastronomical experiences. I include craft beer also in this passion. And currently I'm studying a Master of Artificial Intelligence.
And this is me, Javier Gomez. I'm software engineer and I live in Tarragona, it's also in Spain. And I'm engineering manager at Typeform of the engineering intelligence team, where we do something like what you would imagine that the Hawk-Eye camera does in the tennis court, like analyzing where the ball goes and then providing insights out of it, like in this image. Yeah, this is what we do. We analyze all the parts of the software development lifecycle. We obtain metrics and we provide insights out of it. Like in our catalog, we have solutions like measuring service level indicators against service level objectives. We have availability metrics, performance. We also provide 4 key metrics for the team and incident root cause analysis. This is the kind of things that we do at Typeform. And let me take you to the beginning of the presentation now. What is a standard? We are talking about standards, but what is a standard? So standard is anything that engineers agree in between them in order to follow and to work together. And this is, for example, choosing a specific testing framework or deciding on a specific level of coverage before you merge a commit, or adding some sort of static analysis, linting code, or some way of managing the progress and the delivery of the team, like Scrum, or using a specific version of a library. These are examples of standards, but as you see, it can be almost anything. So we say a standard is an agreement between engineers to comply with defined rules. And you might be wondering, and why standards matter? Yeah, well, they matter, and I'll tell you why with this image of a train. So in 1883, it was decided to standardize the time zones in the US railroad. This is why we have time zones today, and we can deal with time worldwide. But in those days, there were no time zones, and the time of every train station was based on the highest point of the sun. You know, highest point of the sun, it's 12 o'clock in this station. But then you go with the train to the next station and you need to resync your clock depending on sun position. So there was different hours on every station. And this resulted in a problem. There were even accidents with people dying, because despite that trains were traveling at the right time, according to them, they were traveling in different hours, in different directions, and they collide. So that's why they standardized the time as a whole between the US and the US East and West Coast. So standardize is important because it saves life. You may say, well, we do software, not trains. We barely are going to kill someone. Okay, yeah, but software today, it's everywhere. No? And I remember in 2018, an autonomous vehicle killed a cyclist. Software will soon have more legal implications. And I remember Uncle Bob Martin said, the best is that we, the software experts, auto-regulate ourselves before others come to do so, like politicians or whoever need to come. So it's better that we self-organize and create these standards of quality to prevent, obviously, killing people, but in general to work better together. And this is why we want to show you we have created two key artifacts to dealing with standards. Our first one is the standards and proposal board, where everyone at Typeform can create a standard. So you have an idea, you propose it here. And then we have created what we call the standard adoption tool, that it's a way to measure this standard, the level of adoption in the whole organization. Let me show you a little bit the process. So at the very beginning, any engineer at the company can propose a standard, and then the next stage is a discussion. You obtain feedback and you improve the standard based on the suggestions of your colleagues. And then there is a process of deciding if this standard is a go or a no-go. Maybe it's not the right moment right now to implement this standard. So once it's a go, we define metrics to measure the adoption, and we provide some visualizations of who and when has adopted what. So we are more or less measuring the change, right? And then it's time for the teams to plan and put some goals into adopting those standards in a certain amount of time. And they have to report on a weekly by weekly basis on the progress of it. Let me tell you an example of a standard. So I remember some time ago, Travis Continuous Integration changed their policies without any notice. So that screwed up us. We out of a sudden started having long queues in our agents. Teams were blocking each other, waiting for their builds to finish. So we started exploring alternatives, and we found out that self-hosted GitHub Actions could replace Travis CI. And there was a standard proposal created, but you might wonder, in an organization with more than 100 engineers, how do you, and more than 350 repositories, how do you propose such a change? You know, everyone needs to go change their pipelines, and well, spoiler alert, the answer is with the standard proposal dashboard and the standards adoption tool, and we are going to explain you how a history of success with this.
Well, it all starts here actually in the standards and proposal board with a proposal that goes through many stages. Initially it is drafted, and then it starts welcoming feedback of the whole engineering department. When there is enough feedback and it was implementing, the proposal is moved to final, waiting for an approval from the decision makers. These are usually director and some senior engineers, subject matter experts in that particular topic. Finally, a proposal can then move forward, meaning it can be implemented, or can be dropped and reconsidered for a future moment in time. To help engineers write strong proposals that will go through, we offer a template that aims to make things simple. It has different sections. The first one is about understanding the problem in depth. The second one is about presenting all of the options that were considered and then were discarded against the proposal. Then we talk about the proposal in the third one, and about the work that needs to be done in order for the proposal to be fully delivered. And the fourth and the last is about providing the details about the automatic tracker of adoption and how we will be checking for the adoption of the standard with the tool that we provide. And conversations are happening over this document, and it can change a lot while it's in feedback. And one thing we saw that we enjoy a lot, it's when proposals come backed up with data. This can help easily create the business case for the implied changes, and then you also get the conversation going if you see the right data or the right charts helping you with the proposal. So to track the progress of adopting a standard, we have built a dashboard in Looker that represents all of the big data we have gathered on the adoption of standards at Typeform. This is like the UI for the tool that we have built. And this is one of the simplest views that we have for it. It empowers anyone just to filter by team, by date, etc., and to understand the adoption percentage in the organization. This particular trend you are seeing right now on the screen is the average adoption of all the standards that we have at Typeform. Predictability, it's critical for managing an engineering department. So the blue line in the chart is the current adoption that we have Typeform for generally. As we are always adding like new standards that will become mandatory in the next quarter to make it easier for everybody to understand. In red, we also display how those standards will affect the overall adoption if it will be today. This empowers teams to plan ahead the work they need in order to implement those standards. If you remember, we were talking earlier about the Travis migration to GitHub Action. In Typeform, we started tracking the adoption around March when just like 40% of the repositories were migrated. In September, we're around 95% of the adoption, and we are ready to decommission Travis right now. In this visualization, we can see how the rest of the standards are performing. As you can notice, some of the trends are not always going up. In regards to this, we realized that the newly created repositories many times were lacking the standards we were previously agreeing upon. So this made us take some actions from the platform teams to enable things like, for example, a cookie cutter or repository templates that already have all the standards in place for you when you start with a fresh repository. And to make everybody aware about how to arrive at 100%, it's more than critical to have standards documented. And when I say documented, it's especially the technical documentation that empowers engineers to focus on just delivering the standard and not spending a lot of time over and over researching on what they need to do. For this, we have created a concept of a badge that is inspired from Scouts, that you receive badges now for doing a good thing or if you have a certain skill. No? So we give these badges to the different repositories. Depending on the complexity, the badge can have different levels. And finally, what you are seeing on the screen, it's Badgepedia, our collection of all of this information that we talk about. We also generate individual reports for for every one of our repositories in order to help engineers understand the particularities behind the standards applied for each one of the repositories in a more friendly format. We generate all of that information automatically. So we've built an internal tool in TypeScript that helps us with this. It consists of a set of evaluators of adoption that helps us understand what's going on in each one of the repositories. For example, for the GitHub Action migration, we have a simple check to see if a Travis YML file is present in the repository. For every evaluation, we give different levels of adoption. Like these levels help us calculate the adoption percentage for that particular repository. In this case, it's pretty simple. It is still have a Travis file. The repository we will give a level 0 because they still need to make the migration. When I say they, it's the team. And if not, we give level 1 of the 1 because we consider that has been already done. This corresponds to a 0 and a 100%. We also choose to skip, for example, a repository for this evaluation, like a Travis configuration repository, because we know it's strictly related to Travis and we will fully delete it when we fully migrate away from Travis. So we don't need to migrate that right now. And it's actually pretty hard and impossible. Finally, the evaluation is run for each one of the repositories that we have in the organization. So to be able to visualize all of this nice dashboard you've just seen, we need to generate data frequently, at least on a daily basis. So we use Airflow to execute a data pipeline that runs the code that we just shown, that is extracting all of this data and it's storing it in the data warehouse that we have. And all of these tiny bits of processes and technology that we shared contributed to a strong success in the organization in terms of standards. Now everybody has an idea for standard, also thinks, hey, how are we going to measure the adoption of that standard? We can say that also product and platform engineering are proactively planning and working on adopting standards together thanks to this tool. And we have now a common language when we speak about maintainability and technical depth. That makes it visible also for non-technical stakeholders like product managers now in the organization, that what we are working to achieve. And while working the standards, we also noticed, like inevitably, that the keeping old code bases up to standard was a lot of work. We concluded that through this process, the teams became more aware about the deep technical depth that they had accumulated over time. And this led to discussions about, should we retire these old services, not, where should we put the effort? Migrating this to new standards, to the new standards, and accepting the new standards, or deprecating those services, for example. And now we have real data to be informed about this conversation. We also can say that we are able to migrate our CI/CD provider from Travis CI to GitHub Action in a couple of quarters. We didn't need to schedule a special migration operation or the typical constant reminder for platform teams, no? Initially, we were trying to get that just by raising awareness and saying, hey, we need to arrive to migrate this. But for a couple of months, we were keeping trying, and we got very poor results. When every team goal included a certain level of adoption, and also when the teams were asked to report on the progress on a weekly basis, then we saw that the level of adoption started to grow and increase in the whole organization. With this solution, we are also able to understand in a glimpse where we have troubles in the platform. For example, for security team, the adoption of some security standards is critical, and it's now visible in a very fast manner. So they can see the percentage of adoption and go where the most problems are and try to help that team. There's a lot to speak about standards, and we'd love to do that, but we know sadly there is not enough time. So we wanted to mention that we couldn't achieve this also without having to go through some pains, and failures along the way. And we're happy to share those in the Q&A section if you are interested. Now we have some questions for you out there in the audience to think about. Maybe you can answer them via the Q&A section or via chat. What would you do differently to improve the adoption of standards in your company? And what do you need to make a tool like this one that we just presented work in your organization? Finally, this is very philosophical. Is this testing or quality? Me and Javi, we don't really know, but we would like to know what you think about it. And thank you for being part of this session today. And we'd like to ask you for your feedback so we can improve for ourselves and also the presentation for the next time. So scan the QR code and answer the fun video ask we have prepared for you. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to drop us a message for me on LinkedIn and to Javi in Twitter. And now it's all about you. Let us know your questions.